Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest presentation in the OSLC Community Webcast series. Today's presentation is Developing OSLC-Based Integrations, Kovairs Experience. The Communications Workgroup from OSLC started this webcast series at the beginning of this year to provide a forum for OSLC community members to share their experiences and their successes, to show off their work, and to connect with other OSLC community members to begin another round of creative collaboration. Kovair has previously done a beautiful webinar highlighting and demonstrating the integrations and what they provide for their customers. You can find this webinar on the Kovair website, and I encourage you to take a look, as it really gives a wonderful example of what they've been able to achieve using OSLC as their integration technology. To get a sense for the breadth of integration that the Kovair Omnibus integration provides, I also encourage you to go and take a look at open-services.net/software. And as you look through all the products listed on that page, you'll see under the support column how often Kovair Omnibus integration comes up and the wide breadth of products that this enables you to connect to integrate with through their solution. So with all this wonderful work that they've done, we now have a fabulous opportunity to get inside the effort that took place at Kovair and learn from their experiences. So I would now like to turn control over to Atanu Majumdar, the VP of Product and Technology for Kovair, and the Senior Project Manager there, Puranjoy Chatterjee.
Thank you, Sean. My name is Atanu Majumdar. I'm the Vice President Production Technology at Kovair. I have with me today Puranjoy Chatterjee, who is the Senior Project Manager. Today we'll be discussing about Kovair's experiences in developing OSLC-based integration. Puranjoy was the architect for developing these OSLC-based integrations. So we will start today with an ALM integration scenario and its problems, and then we'll see how Kovair Omnibus Integration Platform is coming as a solution there. Next, we'll talk about OSLC and some of its concepts. And then we'll see how Kovair is enabling OSLC support for major ALM tools. And then Puranjoy will take us through the development lifecycle of Kovair OSLC adapter and the experiences that we had while doing the design, development, debugging, testing of Kovair OSLC adapter. And finally, we'll have a question and answer session, and you would be able to submit your question using the questions panel, and we'll get you answers. So let's start with a typical ALM integration scenario. In this picture, we described a typical software development ecosystem where your requirement analyst is using IBM Requisite Pro tool. Your architect is using Enterprise Architect. Another group of architects may be using IBM Rational Software Modeler. Your Java developers are using Eclipse. Your .NET developers are using Visual Studio. Your configuration management is getting done using Team Foundation Server. It could be Subversion. It could be IBM ClearCase also. Building is through Hudson. Java developers are doing unit testing using JUnit. and your test management is getting done with HP Quality Center and functional testing with Quick Test Professional. Now you see that most of these tools are not connected. Maybe some of the tools which are coming from the same vendor, they are connected. Like if you are picking Rational Software Modeler and Requisite Pro, there is an integration between that. If you are choosing Visual Studio and Team Foundation Server, there would be some integration. If you are using Quality Center and QTP only, there would be integration. But, for example, if you want to see your requirements from within Team Foundation Server or Visual Studio, you are out of luck there. So generally what you do when you confront that situation when the tools are not connecting to each other, you go for a point-to-point custom connection. But that is not a scalable solution. The complexity, the number of adapters that you have to build to connect 10 different tools, for example, would be 45 different connectors that you need. The order of complexity is there n square. So that is not in any way a scalable solution to build an integrated ALM ecosystem. Now let's talk about some of the problems that you have when you do not have the tools connected. The first one is visibility. So as a developer, let's say I'm using Visual Studio or Team Foundation Server, whereas my requirements are getting tracked within Requisite Pro. So from Visual Studio or TFS, as a developer, I do not have any visibility into the requirements as they are getting developed, refined, modified. I do not have any idea about how the things are done within Requisite Pro. And also the same way, I do not have any visibility into the test cases as they are getting created or as they are getting executed within HP Quality Center or QTP. So that's a big problem. The second one is the traceability. So if you cannot trace your requirements to your models and then to your code files and then to your test cases and defects, how do you basically propagate your changes that are getting done, let's say, within requirement down the chain? So if the requirement gets modified, the developer needs to be notified about that. The model may need to be changed. The test cases need to be modified. So unless these artifacts that are getting generated through different tools are not connected or traced, there is no way you would be able to do a good change management or impact analysis. The next one is the collaboration. So unless the developer can collaborate with the tester on the defect that he is working on, maybe he or she is not being able to recreate the defect. So he needs to collaborate with the tester, and unless these tools are connected, you would not be able to do that. And finally is the reporting. Your project manager needs reporting, and that needs to collect the data from different tools. So today, what project manager does, he or she collects these different data from different tools through some export mechanism and put those in an Excel sheet to create the report. And that's a wastage of time, productivity, and also it's outdated the moment you kind of generate that. So those are the major problems with a typical the disconnected ALM ecosystem as we have today. So what are the benefits that we are looking from an integrated ALM system? As we discussed, the data visibility is number one, traceability between the artifacts generated from different tools, process automation across tools, and of course, consolidated reporting. And that would basically bring in better project management and quality. And of course, you would have better productivity because you are not wasting time to collect information from different tools. From within your preferred environment, preferred tool environment, you could see your lifecycle artifacts forward and backward from within your tool environment. Now, let's see how Kovair is bringing the solution for ALM integration. So as you can see in this picture, Kovair is providing an integration platform. It's a one-stop solution for your ALM integration. And you can see all these tools are connected through adapters to these integration platforms. The beauty of this architecture is that you don't need to build 45 connectors to connect 10 different tools. You just need 10 adapters. And the moment a tool is on this platform, it can talk to any other tool on the platform and synchronize data bidirectionally with any of these tools. And with this platform, you get consolidated reporting, dashboarding, you have process automation across the lifecycle stages, and of course you have the traceability through the requirement, coding, testing to your deployment. Now, Kovair is a service-oriented architecture-based enterprise service bus-based integration platform. Of course, it is not point-to-point integration. The order of complexity here is n. So that results in the reduction in the cost and effort for your integration. Kovair comes up with out-of-the-box integration for the Java development, .NET, and open source development. If you have a distributed team where your tools are in different geographic locations and your tools are under or behind the firewall, there is no problem. Kovair Omnibus is service-oriented architecture, and it can integrate any tool behind the firewall. When you are setting up an integration for different projects, for different tools, you may need to have different kind of integration rules. So you need to have a configurable platform where you can set up as an end user your integration rules just through drag and drop configurations without requiring any coding. Kovair does provide that. And finally, you have a process traceability reporting across the entire development lifecycle. So this is the Kovair architecture for on-premise application tools. You have the bus and the tools are connected through the adapter. Kovair also supports hybrid cloud environment. So if your tools are within the cloud, like it could be Salesforce, QuickBooks, NetSuite, Kovair also has the IT service management tool, which is SaaS. And we have adapters for those cloud-based tools so that you can build a hybrid cloud environment also. This is the inventory of the tools currently we have. It's about 30 plus tools, and you can see it covers majority of the lifecycle stages in ALM. And this is a growing list. We are building adapters every quarter. So now let's get into OSLC. So what is OSLC? OSLC is a community-driven open specification for sharing data across the lifecycle tools. And OSLC is organized into a number of work groups that are focused on specific lifecycle stages in ALM. And those are like change management, quality management, requirements management, asset management, and architecture management. There are two concepts, OSLC provider and OSLC consumer. So what is an OSLC provider? OSLC provider exposes the domain data as it is defined in OSLC. and it provides REST APIs or JSON or XML to create, update, and delete resources within that particular tool. It also provides delegated UI. And what is the consumer? The consumer provides or consumes the data that is provided by the OSLC provider. And what it does, it offers UI interfaces to access all this domain data through the delegated UIs and service calls. And it also establishes links between, traceability links between the artifacts. So now let's talk about how Kovair is bringing the support for OSLC. So Kovair has built an OSLC adapter around its Omnibus. As you know, that Kovair Omnibus has all the majority lifecycle tools on the Omnibus already. But these tools are mostly not natively supporting OSLC today. It may be some point later, but today they are not natively OSLC enabled. So what Kovair has built an OSLC adapter around its Omnibus, and that way we are kind of enabling these tools, Jira, Quality Center, TFS, SharePoint, as OSLC providers. And any OSLC consumer tool can consume all the services provided through this OSLC adapter. At this point, we support the change management, quality management, and requirements management specification. We are also working on the architecture management. This is the architecture, the Kovair Omnibus connecting to the tools through the adapters. We have built an OSLC adapter on top of Kovair Omnibus that is kind of taking the calls from OSLC consumer through REST API, and then on the other side it is talking to Kovair Omnibus through the adapter to the tools to get the OSLC responses back. So this is, as Sean mentioned, that last in March we had a demo showing the OSLC kind of integration, and there we showed the integration with Team Foundation Server, Requisite Pro, Quality Center, and Jira. Then that's the screen that we are showing here, and also the link. Today we are not going through the demo, but you can always go to this recorded webinar and check that. At this point, I would introduce Puranjay to take us through the software development lifecycle and the experiences that we had while building the Kovair OSLC adapter. So Puranjay, let me just share your, let me make you the presenter. So you are the presenter, Puranjay. The floor is yours now.
Thank you, Atanu. Hi, everybody. So I'll be discussing about how the Kovair OSLC adapter was built. So I'll be mainly talking about the development path we had taken. But before that, I'll discuss shortly regarding the requirements and requirements to build an OSLC provider. Then some design considerations that we had made, and then come to the development task, the details of the development task. Then we'll have a short debug session where I'll run through the code. It will be a live session, so you can see some of the code and how the calls are getting executed. Then I'll discuss about the testing plan. What were the things in particular we had to keep in mind for doing the testing. Then we'll discuss about the Leo test suite. So it actually helped us verify the product. Whatever we built, they were as per the specs. And then I'll talk shortly about the challenges we had faced while doing this development. First, let's talk about the requirements for building an OSLC adapter. So any tool that has to build a provider, they have to allow the OSLC consumer to connect to that particular tool. So that is the first requirement. Allow establishing a connection between the OSLC consumer tool and the provider tool. So if we say the OSLC consumer is RRC, Rational Requirement Composer, then and QC is the provider, then we'll have to set up a way so that these tools can get connected. So after the connection is established, next target would be to publish a catalog of artifact containers being exposed by the provider tool. By artifact container, what we mean here is that all these tools, they have some artifacts or some items, some resources which we are trying to get linked from the consumer. So these resources or artifacts are usually kept inside some logical grouping. They are kept inside some container. In QC it is projects, in TFS also the container is a project. But in some other tool, let me say SharePoint, it is a site. Similarly, for some other tool it may be a module. So we have to publish a list of containers, that is list of projects for QC. Next, a service provider has to be published that will give the information for linking the artifacts or creating new artifacts in the provider tool. Also, we'll have to allow creating or linking domain data from the provider tool. So the catalog basically publishes the locations or URLs from which the links can be established, and then we have to actually do the linking. After that, once the link is established, we should be able to provide a preview. When somebody does a mouse over on that link within the OSLC consumer tool, that person should be able to view a short description about the resource. That resource is actually in some other tool like QC or TFS or Jira, but the person should get a short view as a preview. And if he clicks on that link, he should get a detailed screen where all the field values or whatever field values are exposed for the integration, those will show up. So this actually allows the user to see the data without going into the provider tool. And then some backlinks need to be created inside the artifacts of the provider tool, so that sitting in the provider tool also you get an idea that this particular item is connected to such and such items in the OSLC consumer. So these are the requirements, top level requirements for an OSLC provider. And our integration, actually it is an adapter which enables all the tools connected to Omnibus to behave as a provider. So while doing the design, these are the major considerations that we had to do. Firstly, the adapter had to be built on .NET technology. This is keeping in line with the technology which we are using for our main product, the Omnibus integration, and also the Kovair application. So we chose to stick to the same technology platform and build this adapter also on .NET technology. Then the next major decision was regarding the artifact containers for each tools. So as I just explained, the artifact containers may be different for each tool. So this became a challenging situation for us, and we had to make sure that the proper container is exposed for the proper tool. Then the selection and creation dialogs had to be created so that people who are linking items from the consumer, from RRC, say, they can see the items from the provider tools, link them, or create their own items inside the provider tools from the OSLC consumer interface. Once the link is created, we had to make sure that the preview information was being fetched from all these tools and showed up properly. and if somebody clicked on that link, we had to make sure that the feed level data from the provider tool was being rendered properly. And finally, the backlinks. So this also was not so simple task for us, considering that the backlinks had to be placed inside the tools which were connected to Omnibus. So in this case, say TFS, QC. So inside these artifacts, we had to create the links to the OSLC item. So these were the major considerations while doing the design. Let's now talk about how the integration works. So on the left-hand side, you can see that there is an OSLC consumer tool. It can be RRC, RTC, or RQM. And this tool is sending out requests to the Kovair OSLC provider. Requests can be of the nature of search, or creating a link, or creating a new item, or a preview request. So all these requests come to the Kovair OSLC provider, and this provider forwards the request to the Kovair Omnibus Integration Platform. So the tools on the right-hand side, which are already integrated with Omnibus, then gets the request and furnishes or provides the data. So this response from that specific tool flows back to the same chain and reaches the OSLC consumer. So this is the way the entire integration works. So this is a generic design diagram for building an OSLC provider. So it basically speaks about the specific items that we need to build and the information that we get out of each of these items. So to start with, we have to come up with a root service. This is the main URL of your integration or your provider. And when this root service is registered in the OSLC consumer tool, then some calls from the consumer tool comes to this URL, and these are the information that needs to be provided at that time. The catalog URL, the OAuth URLs, the consumer key generation URL. So catalog URL is a URL that gives you a list of service providers. So when you hit that URL, you'll get a list of service providers or containers. Next is the OAuth URLs. So these are, there are I think 3 or 4 URLs that are returned, and these are used by the consumer for authorization through OAuth. And lastly, there's the consumer key generation URL. So this URL is again used to generate a consumer key. The consumer key acts as a link between the consumer and the provider. It helps the consumer to uniquely identify which provider it is going to talk to. Then comes the catalog. So catalog, as I said, it gives you a list of URLs for the service providers. So service providers are, you can think of them as the artifact containers. So you'll get, if there are 5 projects from QC, you'll get 5 service provider URLs when you ask for the catalog or when you hit the catalog URL. Now we have established a connection between the tool at this level. So the consumer is now connected to the particular tool. Next, the catalog provides you the project level or the container level information, and after selecting the specific container that you want to integrate with, now you are connected to the project level also. Next, we have to go down to the artifact level. So for doing that, at the service provider level, you get some URLs for selection dialogs and creation dialogs for the specific artifacts. So using those URLs, you can either get a list of items from which you can select an existing one and link it, or you can get a creation dialog where you can create a new item, and this item will be created inside the provider tool and the link will be placed inside your consumer. So when this link is getting placed inside the artifact from your consumer, over there the item details link will be returned. And this item details is a link that the OSLC consumer will use to fetch the item level data for the connected items. So it may be for the sake of a preview, that will be a shorter information, or it may be for the detailed information, field level, all the fields. So in that case, the user will click on the link and it will get the view or edit UI for doing that. So this is overall design of a OSLC provider. Now we move ahead to the development task. So as you can see from the previous slide, the development tasks also map one-to-one with that slide. Over here you have to first develop the root service. Root service will provide the OAuth authorization and consumer key generation facilities and also the catalog. Then the catalog will provide the artifact container links, and from the artifact container links you can go down to the selection dialog or to the creation dialog. And from the item details, once the link is established, from the item details we'll get the preview data and also the details of the item if you want to view it by clicking on it. And lastly, we have the backlinks. So developing the backlinks in the provider tools, that was the last task. So let's go through this task one after the other and see what was the response like and what was the code used in these particular components. So first, the root service. So if you look at the box below, you will see that there are some red underlines. So the first underline showing that the root service ASPX, that is the base URL, that is the URL of the root service itself. Next, you see a catalog.aspx URL. So this is the URL, this is the URL for the catalog. And after that you see some request token URL, user authorization URL, access token URL. So these are all the URLs which are used for OAuth authentication. And lastly, you see the consumer key URL. So the OSLC consumer calls this URL to generate a consumer key, and this consumer key is used for further communication with this particular provider. So basically this root service data that I just showed, the response, that is practically a static XML. So in this piece of code shown here, you can see that the same XML, it is being returned in either JSON format or in the RDF format based on what kind of a request has come. If the accept type of the request is RDF XML, then we are returning a string in RDF format. Otherwise, it's a JSON format string. So we have to keep in mind here that the calls may come from the consumer tool itself, or it can also come from some programmatic way. It can be an API call or direct call from the UI. So after the root service, we get to the catalog. So the catalog provides URLs for the service providers or artifact containers. And the service providers, you can think of them as projects in the provider tool. So if you look at the data over here, the response structure shown, so you'll see that services.aspx, that is the base URL for the catalog. And after that, you get a number 5010, which is the project ID. So this particular service provider URL you get over here is for a particular project. So this is for 5010 project. So if we had 5 projects over here, this entire service provider group would have been repeated 5 times with different project IDs. So now we have connected the tool. We have got a list of projects also over here. And if you see the code that has generated this particular response, you see the base URL for the service provider over here as services.aspx. And after that, you see that project ID has been appended to it. So this project ID is coming from the Omnibus integration. So you see omniproj.project ID. Okay, so this is the catalog response. So when you are using a consumer tool, you can see that this is a screen for adding an association. And over here in the associations tab at the bottom, you see an add button over there on the right hand side. When you click that, this add association window comes up. And over here you see the OSLC workspace. The artifact containers are listed, and the OSLC workspace is one artifact container that is coming from the project, from the Kovair adapter. So that particular workspace is exposed over here. This is the 5010 workspace. And when you select this and click on OK, this particular workspace is associated with this consumer project and using this particular relation. So now we have been able to connect up to the project level, and we are inside the provider, the artifact container. So what does the artifact container return? So it returns some URLs for the delegated UIs. There are two major delegated UIs. One is for selecting an existing item. Another is for creating a new item. It also provides some capabilities for query capability and creation factory. So using APIs, if somebody is trying to query your resources, they should be able to do that, as well as they should be able to create items within the provider. And these two items at the bottoms are for the selection dialog and creation dialog. So in the next slide, I have these nodes expanded. So this is the details. First paragraph is for the selection dialog, where we see the URL for the selector.aspx page and for this particular project again. And these are the type of linkages that are allowed with this particular provider. So these are mentioned here. It can be a defect or a plan item or a task. So these items can be related to the items that are coming from this particular provider location. And at the bottom we see the creation dialog. In the creation dialog, again we get a URL for the creator page for that particular project ID, and also we get the usages, like it can be connected to these particular items in the consumer. So this is a screenshot of a selector dialog or a selection UI. So here we can see that choose existing is selected, and just below that radio button, the rest of the screen is coming from Kovair, the Kovair adapter, and it is rendering a list. So within this list, see on the top we have some tool, entity, view, and filter. So these tools are all the tools that are connected from the Kovair Omnibus. And if we have selected TFS here, we get the bug entity, or we get the list of entities that are exposed from the TFS adapter. And when we have selected that and selected a filter, we get a list. Clicking on any of these items and clicking on submit, we create the link to the OSLC consumer from this provider. And when this link is established, the Kovair item.aspx URL is also pushed to the consumer. So this is the item details page. This URL will be accessed by the consumer as soon as the link is provided or the link is established. And this is the details of the item detail page. So from here we again go to the next level. We generate some URLs for the preview. So there are two URLs for preview. One is the preview small, another is the preview large. So preview small typically shows 3 or 4 fields, and preview large shows a few more fields, say 7 or 8 fields. So once the link is established, this item details URL is accessed, and again this RDF XML data is returned from here, which gives the links for the preview pages. And also from the item details page, you get to see or you get to return all these data for this particular resource. The short title, title, identifier, created, modified. These are the items which OSLC mandates that these fields data has to be supplied. So these are the data items being returned for that particular linked resource. So this is a screenshot of the preview UI. So we can see that the link is at the bottom right hand side, TFS bug, and when we put the mouse over on top of this link, we get this small dialog on the left hand side. Here also the top portion where the subject is mentioned, TFS bug, so and so, this part is coming from the OSLC consumer, and the remaining part, the portion in gray and powered by Kovair, that writing, that UI is coming from that particular preview URL that was sent with the link. And if we click on this show more, then a bigger dialog opens and a bigger preview of data is visible. This is a screenshot of the creation dialog. So in this earlier screenshot you had seen that we had selected this first radio button, choose existing. So in this one we have selected create new, and this is the form being displayed at the bottom. This form, the fields of this form or the metadata is coming directly from the target tool, that is TFS. And once you put in the data and submit, this item is going to be created inside the TFS, this particular project. And next is the backlink. So the backlink, this is a screen from the TFS. You can see the bug number 644 in TFS, and this is a particular custom field that was built to consume this backlink. And this backlink was pushed into this by the Kovair OSLC provider and the Omnibus integration. So clicking on this particular link, you can open up the OSLC consumer window, log in over there, and go straight to that particular item with which this item was linked. So that's more or less the development task. Next, let us discuss a little bit about the data formats that we had to support. So RDF XML is the most commonly used data format for most of the communications. For catalog information, resource data, links, backlink, everything works through the RDF XML. And this is the sample for RDF XML. And below that we can see that the JSON format. So this is also used for catalog information and resource data, links, backlinks. So this is the example for the JSON format. And next is the OSLC compact XML format. So this is mainly, we have seen that it is the OSLC consumer sends a call in this format when it is asking for the preview URL and the link is being created. So this is another format that we had to support. Okay, so now let's do a short debugging session where I'll show you that when we are creating a link, how it is coming into the code and what are the steps being followed. So this is the RRC window that you can see, and we have created a requirement, test requirement for webinar. So this requirement has just been created, and if we go to links, we want to create a link. So the control comes here. So our OSLC adapter, the code control comes here, and if we just execute it from here, so here we are checking the accept type, whether it is JSON format or it is the RDF XML format. So this one is in RDF XML format. So this request is RDF XML. It comes into this part of the code. And we get to see the selector dialog. So this is the workspace that was mapped, and when we click on choose existing, these are the tools that are connected to the Omnibus. We are choosing TFS and bug. So this call went to the Kovair integration engine and came up with the list of filters for this particular tool and this particular entity. So this list is also coming from TFS. This is the list of bugs that was fetched from TFS, and we can select one of them, click on submit. So now the link is created over here, and the call comes to the Kovair item page, that is the item detail page I was talking about. So within this item detail page, we'll be returning the preview URL, yes, so this is the preview URL being returned. So for the preview, this particular URL will be accessed by the consumer. So again, there are two, one for the preview small and one for the preview large. So again, another call has come to the item detail page. This call is for the backlink. So the backlink has to be created within the provider tool. This is the action being sent to the Omnibus engine for creating the backlink within the provider tool. So now we have the link here. When we do a mouse over, we get to see the preview. So let's go back to the presentation. So that's more or less about the development. Now let's go to the testing. So the major considerations while doing the testing are, we had to test with multiple consumers, the RRC, RTC and RQM. These are the three consumer tools we use for the testing. Then again, on the other hand, the providers also, we had to check with multiple provider tools which are connected to Omnibus, like Requisite Pro, Quality Center, TFS and Jira. So we checked with these four tools whether their items were showing up there, whether we could link from RRC or RTC to any of these items, and the preview and detailed dialogues were coming. And finally, another level of testing was done with the Leo test suite. So this actually helped us to verify the product that we had built, whether it was as per the specs and whether it supported all other communication other than the interactive one, that is from the consumer. Excuse me. So now we'll discuss about the challenges faced. So firstly, understanding the structure and flow of links and data between OSLC consumers and providers. This itself was a little bit of a challenge for us because the way I explained that from the root service it goes to the catalog and then the service provider and so on. We had to spend some time to get the flow right. And then we had to support these multiple data formats because sometimes the calls come in JSON format, sometimes in RDF XML format. So we had to make sure all the data is returned in all the formats. Then we had to support the non-UI based features like query capability and creation factory so that programmatically also the same things could be done. And also ensuring all the requirements for the Leo test, that also was a challenge for us because when we had started on the project, we didn't have it in mind that it has to be run through the Leo test suite. So when we ran it first, we came up with some problems and then we had to rectify them. Making sure the adapter works for all repository-based tools currently integrated with Omnibus. So we had to make sure that all the tools were working properly with the consumers. And then rendering of backlinks was also a challenge because we had to do it in separate tools with their separate data formats, separate kind of fields. So that also was a challenge. So we'll move ahead and show you the Leo test compliance. So this is the report that we got after running the Leo test suite for the CM specs on our adapter. And we can see that the level 1 compliance is there and all the test cases that were required, all of them had passed. This is for the CM specs and this is the report for the RM specs. So here also all the 33 test cases had passed. So now I'll give you a short demo on how we actually did the Leo test. So it will not be possible to run the Leo test because it takes some time. I'll just show you the basics there. So this is a Kovair properties file where we actually put in the base URL or the root service or the catalog URL for our adapter, and we have to run it from here. And if we click on run, the testing will start. I'll not do it right now because it will take about 10-11 minutes, but I'll show you the report that we first got when we could not pass the Leo test. So this is the report we had got, non-compliant, and 16 of the test cases had failed for the must requirements. And after these problems were solved, then we got the report that I just showed in the presentation. So this is the pass report with all the 110 test cases passed. So the only change over here between these two was that this paragraph was missing. So we had not taken care of the JSON format for a particular response, and that was detected and we got the failure. So that was about how we ran the Leo test. So that's all in the presentation that I have, and these are some of the references like OSLC primer document and the Eclipse Leo project and integrating products with OSLC tutorial. So this tutorial was very helpful, and also Steve Spiker's video on the openservices.net/resources site. This was also very useful for us. So you can look up these references. So with that, I'll pass the control to Atanu to summarize on this. So Atanu, can you take over, please?
Thank you, Puranjay. It was a very detailed and useful insight into how the Kovair adapter was built, OSLC adapter was built. So let me now summarize. And okay, so what we have seen is that OSLC is an open community focused on the domains for coming up with open specifications for sharing lifecycle data based on web integration patterns. And Kovair, having that Omnibus and having 30+ different tools already on the Omnibus connected, what we have done is we built an OSLC adapter on top of Kovair so that all these different tools can be consumed from OSLC consumer tool. The list of tools you can see if you go to the openservices.net software page, you can see how many tools are getting supported at this point. And Kovair is continuously releasing these new adapters for ALM tools, and those tools would immediately be available as OSLC providers. So we would bring support for more tools as we move forward. And if you want to see a customized demo for to see how the integration works with your choice of tools, please contact Kovair, and we'll be more than happy to take you through a complete integration demo with your choice of tools. With this, I would now basically open it up for the question and answer session, and you can submit your questions through your Q&A panel. And let me see if I have some questions already. Just a second, okay. So, Puranjay, the question is, have you implemented UI delegation features? Puranjay, can you hear me?
Okay. So, yes, the answer is yes. So the answer is yes, we have done the delegated UIs, and that is why the preview I had shown that was coming up, and also the creation dialog and the selection dialog, these delegated UIs have been developed by us.
Okay. So the next question is, what if I cannot create an item with just title and state because there are more required fields? So let me answer these. So yeah, you are right that it could be for certain tools more than just not the title and state is the required field. There could be more required fields. So Kovair has a kind of configuration editor, and through the Kovair adapter, we while configuring the mapping for the tools, we know exactly which are the fields that are required, and that would basically force us to set some values for the required fields, or you have to select those fields within our the create dialog or the edit dialog. So Kovair already has that configurable functionality that you can configure that whether you want to basically give it a kind of predefined value, or you want to put that value through your UI dialogs, but all the required fields are exposed through the adapters, and while configuring the mapping, you should be able to see it and take the necessary action. Okay, so the next question is, so Puranjay, for you, the question is, you construct XML using string operations. What happens if URLs or project names contain XML characters?
Yeah. So yes, those have to be escaped, and there has to be some format for escaping those characters, the XML reserved characters, and I think those should work.
Okay. So it is already in place.
Yes.
Okay. Now, so the next question was with respect to these UI delegation features. What he is saying with UI delegation features, I mean to the native UI of the tools. So if your question is that whether we have extended the UI for any tool to create like OSLC consumer tool, that we have not done yet, but we have the plan to create OSLC consumer tool also, extending the UI of the ALM tool to behave like the rational requirements composer or rational quality manager or rational team concert does. We have another question is that do you have the OSLC enabled for these configuration management tools like Subversion or ClearCase? So the answer to this question is that we have the adapter for all these configuration management tools already. So all these configuration management tools are connected through the Omnibus, but I think at this point there is no OSLC consumer available or provider. I think there's just only one rational Synergy is providing the configuration management support, but there is no OSLC consumer tool which is providing that consumer support. But we would work with the OSLC group to bring in the support for these OSLC the configuration management specification also. Let me see if I have any more questions. So I think at this point, these are the questions that I had. So Sean, you have any further thing to add?
I just want to thank you both for such a wonderful presentation, not only showing us what you were able to do, but to take us inside and actually debugging your code as you to show the flow that that your tool has to deal with for the integration. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really appreciate the effort that you obviously took to prepare this for us. And everyone on the call, I'm sure, feels the same way and feels that they got a very good benefit out of attending it. And many more people, since this has been recorded, will get that benefit as well. And I also it struck me you guys were using C# in order to implement your integration, and I think this is one of the strengths of the integration method that OSLC is using. Just based on the architecture of the web, every programming language provides you with the tools necessary to work with a web, work with the internet. And so from whichever your preferred programming language is, you can integrate using OSLC, and I think that was demonstrated in a very good way by the presentation you showed today. So I just really would like to thank everyone for joining, and especially to Kovair for sharing this with us.
Thank you, Sean. Also,
Thanks, Sean.
Both me and Puranjay, we thoroughly enjoyed doing this webinar, and I hope that this will be useful for the OSLC, the group members, and the other end users. And if you have any further information, please contact sales@kovair.com. This webinar would be recorded, getting recorded, and we'll kind of post it to our website, and also we'll pass it on to Sean so that he can set up a link from the OSLC group, and that would be available within the next couple of days. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time. Bye.